Chris, welcome back.
It is great to see you, Stephanie. I mean, we're dealing with some stuff this morning. We got stuff. I mean,
yeah, what kind of stuff are you dealing with?
Yes, our guest didn't show up, but doesn't really even equate to what you were just telling me about your hairbrush. I mean, you want to talk about it?
I don't know if I can talk about it without being emotional. I have this really good hairbrush that I bought years ago, and it's a perfect hairbrush. And I stayed overnight in Vancouver on Tuesday night, and I left my hairbrush in the hotel.
I can relate. No, I can't. There's nothing I can relate to that sentence.
Yours is the polisher, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I got nothing for you here as far as that. But I can empathize. This is empathy. That's what's happening here. It's not sympathy because,
There's a first time for everything, right? Yeah. Did you hear about the tiger that ate the tightrope walker?
No, tell me about the tiger that ate the tightrope walker.
He was looking for a well-balanced meal.
See, for you, what I've got for you this morning is that, I flew to Scotland. We hiked the West Highland Way. It was an incredible trip, unbelievable trip, super exciting. But it turns out the English Channel is not part of the BBC. It's actually a body of water. Didn't know that. Yeah.
We talk a lot about selling and all of the different ways that you can sell as a founder. How fast can channel partners actually start selling? Did you know that according to Channel Sales Insights in 2023, 73% of channel partners take 6 or more months to generate their first meaningful revenue? When Calendly founder Tope Awotana launched his channel program, he discovered that partners with pre-existing customer relationships close deals 3 times faster than those starting from scratch. This insight reshaped how he structured his entire partner onboarding process. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about developing a channel sales strategy. I am your host, and with me today is my wonderful co-host, Chris Franks, who I have missed so much.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back. Chris, you and I talk about this a lot. This is one of my favorite sales topics. Let's dive into it. What is the biggest mistake that founders make when they're setting up their first channel partnerships?
I think that in my experience, founders shy away from channel partnerships because they believe it's more complex and more difficult than it actually ends up being. And so I'll tell you the conventional wisdom has been, at least for me, as I was coming up in the world of startups and sales and marketing, which is channel partnership is this incredible button. You press it. You don't have to build out your sales force. It can spread rapidly. You can use their infrastructure. You can use partnerships, etc. But you trade control for pain in the assedness. And so it's such a pain in the ass to manage channel partners because they're needy, they need stuff. It's harder for them to be activated. You have to convince them to go out and sell your product versus other products. That's what I believed for a lot of my career as I was going into this world of channels. True, not true? What do you think? Was that your belief as you were coming up in this world of sales and marketing?
So I come from a slightly different perspective in that we were a startup and we were small and we were probably never going to be big because that was the whole point, was small group expert resources. And I would say that channel partners were our primary point of sales because as a small organization trying to sell into big corporations, it was almost impossible for us to get the procurement stuff in place, to have the insurance that was required. So for us to be able to be brought in through a channel partner strategy was 70% of our sales. And so I looked at channel partners as like, yes, how many can I get? Right. And because it was such a valuable asset for us and we needed it. Right. It wasn't just another strategy. We actually really needed it. And it made things a lot easier. And I would say most of our inroads, because once you get working with the customer, then they're going to want to re-engage with you. But I will acknowledge that there is a more difficult to to spend your time trying to manage partners as opposed to your own internal sales team.
So, I mean, talk me through that process, because I think that this is the piece, and this is really kind of the heart of this conversation, which is I think that as a founder, I don't really know how to sell my stuff. Even if I've gone out and I'm trying to sell it, I'm talking to people, et cetera, I may be pivoting my product. I'm still in this area. And it feels like as you go to channel partners, like you have to be fully baked. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know your pricing strategy. You have to know all these things before you can even approach channels. And I think it's a little bit of a misconception, but it's one that I've had.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that when a channel partner to me is almost like another client, right? So when we could figure out what would make the channel partner want to engage with us, like what does it give them? We did a lot of work through Microsoft, for example, and Microsoft needed a way to differentiate themselves in enterprise accounts going in to do licensing renewals, for example. These are multi-million dollar engagements, right? And so they used us to sweeten the deal, right? They used us as an add-on to be able to offer something that was better or more valuable to their corporate clients. So is that a channel? Like, it's a partnership, but if we listened to if we considered them a client and we listened to kind of what they need, then we could position and structure our offers in a way that really helped them do whatever it is that they were trying to do. And that's the same kind of approach that I've used with any other channel partner or partner for sales. And I advise my founders that this is one of the fastest ways that you can develop a market and develop an audience is through partners. But you've got to be able to help them understand what they get from representing you and bringing you in.
This is, I think, the thing, and again, my opinion changed on this down through the years, but when I was starting out, what you're just describing feels complex. I'm still working on trying to figure out what value I'm providing to the end user. So in this case, the companies that are using Microsoft for your company, right? I'm trying to figure out how I can build the best possible product for that end user. To do that, I need to go out and talk to those people. I need to go out and communicate. I need them to test it, et cetera. And then putting another party in between that, who, for all intents and purposes, is your customer, kind of, because you need to sell to them as well. And so it adds this layer of complexity into you building a product of value. And I think part of the other fear, at least, is that with a channel partnership, they might not get it right. They might suggest products that changes and features, et cetera, that actually don't provide value to the end user, but yet you're in this relationship now where you desperately need them to sell. Does that make sense? Like, just that layer of complexity. As a founder, how do I start to think through that?
Well, I actually think it's an opportunity, right? And so this is an opportunity for you to get if you're selling a product, to get your product in front of a whole pile more people than you would otherwise. And so that's where I would be working with the channel partner to say, how do we like get the best feedback back from, because you're aligned in your objectives, right? You want to get as much of this product in front of as many people as possible, them from a financial perspective, you for adoption and feedback. So without them, do you get the chance to get as broad and varied a feedback base And if you can, great, go do it on your own. But this gives you an opportunity to very quickly get in front of new markets that you probably didn't have penetration into before.
I think what you're saying there, and it's a really good point, it's not one that I've considered, is that if in this early stage, when you're trying desperately to get real feedback, you're trying to get real answers, right?
Yeah.
Partners actually will give you real answers. And we know that customers, they don't want to call your baby ugly. You show up in a way where like, no, I want real feedback. And oftentimes you still have a hard time getting it. But in this particular case, a partner who's like, look, I want to sell this. I want to go out and make us both money, but I can't because this is what I'm hearing. Is that more timely,
100%.
accurate feedback?
Yeah, 100%. And it's at a higher volume because you're borrowing someone else's audience, right? You're borrowing someone else's existing client base. So I can't think of a faster way to get in front of a whole pile of people than using a channel partner.
So one other just kind of high level question, and I know that this is maybe it's a little bit too basic for you, but I think for me as an early stage founder, I didn't even know how to start these conversations. Like I was this guy sitting in an office by myself or my basement. How do I approach Microsoft? Like they're big, they're gigantic. A, how do I get the confidence to do that? And then B, mechanically, how do I start to, let's say you've already identified your channel partners, which is a whole nother part of the conversation, but how do you do that? What are the steps that you took to start to get in front of these people?
Yeah. So in that particular case, we happened to have relationships already because we were consultants and we, actually worked for Microsoft as consultants and that sort of thing. But what I will say is that most of these big channel partners have, like, it's not like the only person you're talking to is one at the top, right? So they all boiled, like even Microsoft has like smaller guys that are on the street and you have to, and even they have partners, right? So we actually started with a partner of Microsoft and worked with them, a LAR, they call them. And then Microsoft brought us in eventually because they saw the value of the work that we were doing and what we could offer. So there's always layers down in all of these organizations. And if you can find the layer that, it's just like when you're looking for customers, right? Find the closest relationship that you have to any of these folks. And if you can very quickly prove that whatever you offer can solve a problem that they're trying to solve with their clients, they'll be on you in no time, right? We were relatively unknown as an organization because we were a new kind of startup, but we had relationships, right? We knew people. But they loved what we did and they loved the narrative. So you have to feed your channel partners narrative. You have to give them the selling points and they'll tell you if that works for them or not and their feedback. But like, to me, it's just such a brilliant way to ramp up so quickly because, you just have to have the right pain point. And this comes back to understanding the channel partner and what they're trying to achieve and what is really compelling for them.
The thing that for when I first started working in the channel world that struck me was this idea that I, as a startup, had a good story to tell. I was like, dude, we're a mess. We don't know what we're doing. Kind of all that internal self-doubting, kind of imposter syndrome, et cetera. It wasn't until years later that I realized the power and the coolness factor of being in a startup and how when you walk into big companies, just saying we're a startup can bring so much more coolness to a big enterprise. Is that your experience?
Well, sort of. I would say it's not necessarily about the cool. I've never been cool, but it's
my product.
It's not so much. It's not so much about the being cool. It's that here's some new thinking and some new energy. And I would say you're absolutely right there that a lot of these channel partners are so used to the same thing over and over again that when you have some new narrative for them or something new to talk about, again, it's not that they're sitting there going, oh, that's so cool. They're like, oh, this is a totally new approach to something that my clients are constantly telling me that they're struggling with. So your positioning with channel partners is just as important as your positioning with a customer, right? And I would say that that is primarily like, they want to be able to, these guys go on a regular basis and meet with their big clients all the time, right? And for them to be able to bring something new to the table and say, hey, we've found this startup that does focuses just on integration, and they have an integration engine that they bring to the table, and it's going to actually finally get past these technical roadblocks that you guys have been having, they'd be like, yes, please, right? So then you get to build these relationships with big corporate customers that you couldn't get in front of before, right? That you would, because of procurement issues, or just like you're a startup, who's going to give you that kind of time, right? It's like, I've never been fired for hiring IBM. Well, if IBM brings you in, great, right? So I guess like the next question that I would have is like, how do you, I'm talking like a Valley girl today, how do you choose channel partners?
I'm sorry, you'd have to ask the
like how do you like choose channel partners?
Yeah. So my thinking again has changed on this as I've sort of developed. There's a unbelievable, one of my absolute heroes in the startup space coined a phrase that I've stolen shamelessly, which is minimal viable channel. So the idea there is that I now tend to think that you have to disprove that a channel partnership won't work before you try to build a direct sales, particularly in the B2B space, right? Almost always here, B2B. There are some B2C channel partnerships as well, but in the B2B space, I think it's so freaking hard to sell into enterprises if you walk in as a brand new startup and saying like, hey, I'm Chris, I've got this incredible technology. You're not going to have reference customers. You don't have any third-party validation. You don't have any of the stuff that a big enterprise is going to look for. And so I think it becomes now your primary approach. And I think it now, at least for me and my thinking in B2B startups, Stephanie, is I don't know that I want to do a company in the B2B space without some sort of an idea of what sort of a channel strategy I'm going to have. Again, my thinking has changed on this a bunch down through the years, but is that how you approach it, or is that?
Oh, 100%. And all of the founders that I'm working with, that is then like, to the extent that I actually built a whole little offer around this to help them develop these partners, these channel partners, these channel strategies. And once they start to do it, they're like, oh, I get it now, right? But I do think, like, back to the question, it sort of comes back to making sure you're finding the right partners. And there is some criteria you want to consider, but it's again the same thing as like understanding who you want to sell to, and then backing into a partner who has the same audience and is aligned around the same types of objectives. But I think there's a values conversation in there as well, like an alignment of values. I have seen like when that's not happening, and it can be like a breaker, right? Is if I'm aligned with a partner, a channel partner that does not share the same types of values, they end up selling for the wrong price. They give you, the wrong feedback, or you've got the wrong people. So I do think it's important to figure out how you find your channel partners and how you decide upon them. And I'm not talking necessarily about, I'm trying to move a $10 product and how much can I move in volume like that. I feel like that's a totally different type of business. But if you are selling higher value products or services, how do you find the right partners? I think part of it is, following the money and following the path to your clients or your customers. But I think part of it also is like cultural fit, right? And values fit. Like, I mean, how did you go looking for partners? How did you assess who your best partners were?
I think that the first part of this is acknowledging the fact that this is scary. There is a risk associated with this, which is you put all your eggs into a basket. You have to go through a process of being able to find the right partnership, et cetera. And it's hard. It's just like selling into B2B. It's a hard thing. And there's a risk. What happens if they find something else? What happens if that partnership that's now 80% of your revenue suddenly dries up because they want to develop that product internally? And that's something that happens, right? Those things are part of the process. So there is risk associated with that. But I think to your point, Stephanie, the first thing is we don't say channel partner, we say channel partners. Creating a diverse set of partners is really critically important. And I think, even if you have somebody like a Microsoft, it's so huge that it's just a gigantic thing. Creating multiple avenues is really critically important. I think that's the first piece. But then the second piece is, I completely agree that this is not a sales conversation. It is finding the person that is responsible for you integrating into their business. And there's always those departments, and having an honest conversation about what your business is, what it looks like, and what this partnership would need to look like for you to be able to operate. It's not a negotiation at that point, because you just are having a conversation around, like, look, if we need this to be able to function, we need this amount of money, we need this amount of margin, we model it out. Is that something you could do? And then also, to your point, Stephanie, talking about the values you have as a business. What is it that you want to bring to the table? How do you want to serve your customers? And having those conversations to make sure there's a fit, because when it goes wrong, it's almost always in those details, I think. It's almost always when people don't have those conversations up front, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, structuring the deal, right? That's a whole other, structuring the deal and the relationship. That's a whole other topic for conversation, because part of using a channel strategy is that you are eating it, you are handing over part of your profits, right, to pay for a channel strategy. But I would argue you're either paying for a channel strategy or you're paying for an internal sales team, right? So part of your profit is going to go somewhere. But also, I would say early on, I think that the channel strategy is more beneficial to you than further down the road, right? Because that's how you're going to get the volume and the access to larger organizations until you get the traction. Plus, it's social proof, right? It's like, here's this big partner that is saying, I believe in these guys, give them a break, give them a chance. Or I'm just like, what happened with us, they would just roll it in to the deal. Like, the end customer didn't have to even make a decision whether they wanted to work with us or not. Microsoft just came forward and said, we're writing these guys in, and we're going to give this to you as a benefit.
So this is, I think, another one of the fear points, and I think it's important to address, which is, what if you're going into these relationships and they say, hey, we want to be exclusive, like we're the only people that want to sell you? What if they say things like, we can't sell you at your price point, we can only be at these? Those are some of those things you sometimes get with bigger companies.
Yeah.
It can be scary because you're a startup. It's hard to know what is just a negotiation point versus what is real.
Yeah. I would say that's something you really need to think about, exclusivity, because if I was going to go into exclusivity, I would say, make it worth it for me, right? If you believe so much in what I've built, put your money where your mouth is, right? Commit to a certain volume, commit to, some outcomes, and to a price that's going to make sense for me. Otherwise, I'm not, like, I would go into an exclusivity relationship very, very, very cautiously. Perhaps what I would do is put a time limit on it. For the first 2 years, you can be exclusive, and then we're opening it up, because there is still going to be value in you opening up that market and getting that traction, right? And getting that presence in the market. So if you have nothing right now, I'll tell you, if someone is coming to you for exclusivity, it's because there is a general recognition of how important and impactful what you're creating is. And therefore, I think you have leverage, right? You have leverage to be able to ask for something that makes sense for the organization. But I would be really careful. Now, if the partner comes through and just can't offer you anything that makes sense, they're not a right partner for you, right? Like they're not going to be, unless they can get you into a market that you desperately need to be in. Again, I would put a time limit on the relationship and, consider it for a certain period of time so that you get that social proof, you get that the volume underneath you, and you get some traction in terms of brand recognition.
I think that you just hit on a couple of really key points, but we're also driving to another point, and we mentioned it earlier about the cost associated with these channel partnerships. Not many people walk into the world of B2B startups, technology startups or otherwise, and have the skills and abilities within the channel partnership arrangement. They just don't. It's a really nuanced and difficult area. So I think one of the things we're saying here, Stephanie, is find some help here.
Yeah.
Find people that can help you, because in the earlier conversation, if you go exclusive, they have to be able to commit to a particular amount of numbers, or else you can get out of that arrangement. And it's in the details, but it's a critically important part of a channel partnership.
Yeah, I have seen startups that actually completely tank their business because they got into the wrong partnership strategy early on, and it made it so that they couldn't move in the way that they needed to move once they learned more, right? So again, use caution, maybe consult with somebody who understands channel partnerships really well and can guide you, but it can be extremely, extremely effective. But the costs, of course, like depending on what you're selling, you'll have to train salespeople and the channel partners to know how to sell your product, right? And to understand what the narrative is and the key selling points. Because if they're out selling in a way that doesn't represent your business or your product really well, then that could, just not be very good for you. And so I think like the last kind of topic that I wanted to sort of structure or hit on was, what do we look for? How do we know when a partnership is effective for us? Like, of course, revenue, but what else would you be watching for to assess the value of the partner strategy?
I think that it's a lot like any other relationship, which is it a relationship? Are you able to have open communication? Is there a level of trust there between the parties where they're saying like, hey, this is the roadblocks we're running into. Where on your roadmap are these features? Can we prioritize other features that will help us sell that? That's really incredible and really valuable feedback early for a startup. So I think that, yes, it's critically important to see the numbers and track the metrics. But so much, in my experience, Stephanie, it's relationship driven. It's about going and having a relationship and then forming relationships with the people that are actually going to talk to the potential customers. Yeah. And so this is where this idea of indirect sales or it's almost harder, but even more important than just going directly to a customer and being like, will you buy my stuff? It's building long-term trusting relationships with the people that are going by yourself. And that's a skill into itself, I think.
Yeah, I would be looking for a partner where I could have like that, where they were willing to be beside me and all along the way. And I could have regular touch points with them to almost workshop what they're hearing. And then also feeding back to them, our plans and what direction we're going in, because if they have a vested interest in being successful with whatever you're selling, they're going to want to hear early information. They're going to feed back on early information, all of that. Right. So, I want to hit the speed round and you're going to answer all the questions.
I was going to say, are you going to answer some? I'll answer the best of my ability, but you can just tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I'm sure like we do, we're going to end up.
You will tell me. It's like,
I'll just tell you what you think.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, are you emotionally ready for this?
No, I'm certainly not. I may cry.
Okay, well, it's okay for a man to cry.
During the speed round, it's not. You don't have time for that.
Okay. Invest heavily in partner training to ensure quality, or focus on finding already qualified partners to start faster?
Yes is the answer, but if I had to prioritize one, it would be training.
Okay. Offer exclusive territories to motivate partners, or maintain flexibility to scale with multiple partners?
I would always choose flexibility because you just don't know.
That's right. Require partners to meet strict qualification standards, or lower barriers to get more partners onboarded quickly?
Wrong question. It really is about the relationship and what value they're looking to provide to the customers and what value you can help them provide.
I think you need to make sure to feed back to Anthony that he had the wrong question.
His AI is the wrong question.
Provide extensive marketing materials and support, or expect partners to create their own go-to-market strategy?
This is where you have to support them, but you also have to be aware that this becomes a major part of your job. You need to continue to be there to provide them the information and the support they need to go sell your product.
Set aggressive revenue targets to drive urgency, or realistic goals to build sustainable relationships?
This is the hardest part. It's so hard to model this stuff. You can't put it on a spreadsheet and straight line revenue growth because you don't control it directly. It's all about the relationships and going and building those relationships. And yes, you can try to create urgency, but it's indirect urgency, right?
But it's the same thing as with everything in your business. It's about understanding the people, and the people, even the sales reps inside of the channel strategies, have their own agendas, right? Their own things that they want to achieve. So you have to be just so good at understanding, just like you do with your customers. You need to be so good at understanding what motivates the folks who are inside of that partner strategy, right? Okay, founder fundamentals. What did you take away from the conversation?
Yes, there is complexity involved in creating a channel strategy, but it is the modern go-to-market for most B2B startups. It just has to be. It makes it go faster. You can move with tremendously more speed than if you're trying to build your own internal sales. Partners will give you real feedback that is incredibly valuable. So they're not going to sugarcoat things because their revenue is associated with it. Find the right partners, and you just said it, but this was maybe the one that we should highlight and underline for the entire episode, which is understand their agenda, understand what's driving them and their needs. Be careful in choosing your partners. Be careful with exclusivity. Be careful with the nitty gritty of the arrangement, and get help where you need it. This is selling costs money. And I know it's tough. We don't have a lot of money. A lot of times we're bootstrapping, but finding somebody to help you work through those details can be incredibly valuable. And finally, indirect sales skills is a sales skill. Develop your own skills in learning how to use indirect sales. What are those skill points, and what is the organization? What are your touch points to develop relationships with the people that are going to ultimately go talk to your customers?
Yep.
What did I miss? I'm sure I missed one or two.
No, you're perfect.
Thank you. I feel so validated.
All right, we have a couple of deep dive resources. Channel Sales Excellence by Mark Roberge, and the Channel Partners Guide to Success by John Warrillow. Anything else you would throw in there?
Well, I think it's good, but as far as the plug, really, this is an opportunity. I mean, this is the work that you do, Stephanie. So plug yourself for once.
Well, this isn't all that I do, but I would say we talk a lot about it with our founders because it's just such an important strategy for them. And I would say, like, you know, in the world of service-based businesses, which is what I tend to focus on, these are partners, and the word channel partner doesn't necessarily resonate with that audience, but it's the same concept, right? So these are collaboration partners. These are folks who will bolt on. I always say, look for who's adjacent to you in the industry and who's adjacent to you in the service of your clients in their journey, and, you know, find those partners who are going to benefit from being able to talk about your service or your product. All right. Do you want to close us off?
Sure, I would love to. I think first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for the people listening live. Thank you for the people that are listening to this. We love doing this work. It is really, really fun, and it is incredibly inspiring for all of us to know that we may be able to help some founders out there along the journey. Anthony likes to say, you're the pioneers of economic prosperity. You're the people that are going out and creating value in the world. And it's incredibly humbling and inspiring for us to know that we can help nudge you make fewer mistakes than we made. I made a lot of mistakes.
That's it. There were a lot.
There were a lot of mistakes, which is kind of why we all enjoyed doing this.
Still making them.
Yes. If you stumbled across this, go subscribe. One of the places, subscribe on YouTube. Find all the places on howtofounder.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it is. And thank you. Thank you again for joining us. Go out, do the good work, create value for society, founders. You're amazing human beings. You're special. Go continue doing that work.